Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third day of TLC. My name is Deb Swanson, and I will be the host for this session. The session is entitled Own Your Classroom, Transitioning from Facilitator to Educator. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Jamie Holcomb.
Hello, everyone. It's nice to be here. I'm really excited to get the opportunity to speak with you. And I do have the chat open. I love engaging with people I'm presenting with and working with. So please feel free to hop in there and ask questions. I'll probably be asking some questions throughout our presentation. So hopefully you have that chat up and open, and we'll go ahead and get started. So the reason I selected this topic, I know your conference, the theme is transformation. And your school, like mine, uses curated content in the classroom. And one of the challenges is really figuring out how to transition from facilitating content to becoming the educator and owning your classroom. And a lot of things that we do to achieve that are simple and easy to implement, and simply sometimes just a different way of approaching things. So today I'm going to share with you a couple of strategies to use to own your classroom. I hope you enjoy them. If at any point you have questions, please go ahead and post them in the chat. I'm happy to answer them. So I'm not sure if the chat is covering this up. It's hard for me to tell on my end. So I'll move this here if I can. But a little bit about me. I serve as the Associate Dean of First Year Experience and Education at Southern New Hampshire University's Global Campus. Some of you might know me from the OFYE Matters blog. I know I've had a lot of wonderful Ashford educators contribute to that blog over the last year, so I've gotten to know many of you on an individual level. I'm always happy to connect and discuss online learning and education. My contact information is here should you want to reach out in the future. 5 ways to own your classroom, and we'll go ahead and get started. So the first one I want to talk about is embracing your superpowers. One of the things that helps people transition from being a facilitator of content to an educator is really tapping into the things that they bring to the classroom that is uniquely them. And by that I mean, you come to the classroom with tremendous knowledge. And for a long time, when I began teaching in the online space, to wrap my head around teaching in that space, I thought about the classroom and what it contained and how I would work within that space. And at like a 30,000 level view, right? Your classroom is kind of like the textbook. If you've ever taught in-person classroom, right? You'd have a textbook you're working with and you'd build those lessons. That content is already built into your course, but it doesn't contain everything. It doesn't contain all the details and the goodies that only you can share based on your area of expertise. So as you look at your classroom, find places, any place, that you can share unique knowledge that isn't available in the course. And that might be through announcements, it might be expanding topics a little bit. It could definitely be in the discussion area. It could be in individual conversations with students, and certainly within feedback. But you come to the space with stuff that is unique to you and knowledge that is gained through your own experience. And that leads to this next bullet here. Sharing professional experience. One of the things, and I think we work with similar populations and adult learners, or at least many of our students are adult learners, is the idea that relevance is extremely important, right? So they're coming to the online space with different expectations, different ideas, and kind of an immediate tangible need for these skills. You are in the classroom and you have tons of professional expertise that you bring to the classroom and are able to share that in a way that is relevant and tangible to the students. That could be through your own experiences. It could be through inside knowledge on a specific topic. It could be through your career path. But you have tremendous information and content that's not available in the course. And it is unique with your expertise, your life path, your career path, your professional resources, and those kinds of things really help create a space that is uniquely yours and your own. Does any of this, I have lost my chat bar here, I think, a little earlier. Let's see if I can pull it up. Does anybody have any questions so far? And Deb, if you could shout out if there's any questions for me, that would be great.
Absolutely. I'm keeping an eye on it. So I'll let you know.
Awesome.
All
Thank
right.
you. The next area and way to embrace your superpowers is to challenge students to dig deeper into the topic. And you've probably heard this before, right? A great way to do that is in the discussion. Absolutely asking those deep questions, challenging them to look at topics from a different perspective or a different angle, or maybe even from a different career perspective or angle, but also consider summarizing the activity in the discussion and challenging your entire class to look at things a little bit deeper. This week we explored this topic and we learned the following things, or the following things were shared in the forum. We made great progress. I want to challenge you to think about this one step further. And that is something that cannot be achieved just through the course content alone, and only you have that superpower. You can also challenge students in feedback to dig a little bit deeper. Sometimes, especially when I want to guide students and their thinking on something and help them make those connections, I'll ask those kinds of questions too in feedback. You shared the following things, you're really on the right track. However, have you considered? And then asking some of those questions to help them dig a little bit deeper. Again, that is a superpower that is reserved to you as an educator. And it's really important in moving to own that space and own your classroom. And I saw a couple things pop up here for comments, but I'm losing my control, so I'll come back to those in a little bit. And Deb, just shout them out if you have questions in there.
Jamie, they're just making some generalized comments about making connections, like you're stating, and bringing up the importance of critical thinking and instructive feedback. So if you want to take a look at those later, we can address them at a later time.
Sure. And then finally here, and this is one I consider a extreme superpower, and many of you do this all the time, I'm sure, is to really simplify complex ideas and concepts. Our students, especially when you're working in an online space, are coming to us with different ability levels. They've had different experiences, and sometimes the ideas presented in the course need to be broken down in different ways, or the language of the course needs to be broken down in a different way so that students can understand it. So that is one thing that when you're in a space, that is a trait or a quality that is unique to educators, right? And facilitators, when you're facilitating things, we typically just manage content, right? We're managing the content of the course, but educators will take that content and move beyond just the words on the page, or move beyond the content in the course and really work to teach it through simplification, through breaking down assignments, and through even making some of those key connections. And this is a slide I really love. Number 2, invest in your reflection. And hopefully the little chat box will come in and I'll grab it this time when it does. But I'm going to ask you a question, and hopefully you'll be able to put some content in that chat. But do you remember walking down, if you have children, you might know this too, walking down the hallway of a school and walking into a classroom and feeling like just when you walk in there, you have this great sense of who that teacher is. That everything in that space reflects that teacher's personality, reflects their interests, it reflects how they teach, what they value, the things that are important to them. I'm going to grab that chat box. Did I get it? Yes, I got it. Let's see, we got some comments in there. Oh, educational adventures. That's awesome. I'm sorry, I'm just reading some of these comments now. But do you remember walking down those hallways and into classrooms and feeling like that space told you the story of that teacher? And in our online space, I want you to think about when you're transitioning from facilitator to educator to be you in all things in that classroom. Often when we approach teaching, and it's not, especially when we're just starting, for example, we try to be what we think we ought to be in that space. And by that I mean we might use elevated language, right? We might approach topics a little bit more from a distance. And it might not showcase, that language might not really showcase our personalities. But part of being an educator is being you in all things. So if you are someone that is really funny, and I don't have this, I wish I was really funny. I'm not really funny, but I wish I was. But if you're someone that has a great sense of humor, let that personality, your humor, come through in some of the things that you do. If you are somebody who loves motivational quotes, or let those wiggle their way into your communications with students, because that's part of who you are. If you're someone who maybe is like a TED Talk junkie, right? You just love TED Talks. Share those with your students. Share the things that you're interested in, and let your personality and your presence be infused in every single space of that classroom, because that's really moving from just managing a space to pushing your personality out into everything that you're doing with students and how you teach them. And there's many ways to do that. Language is one. I would also say be present in every space. So sometimes it's easier for us to put our personality maybe in the discussion forum or in announcements, but then we use different language when we get into feedback. Really try to make sure that you are using your voice in all things, in all spaces, and let your personality shine through. One of the things that impacts students so much is the connection that they feel with their educator, the connection that they feel with you. That will impact student success every single time. There's lots of research on rapport and its impact on student success. So building rapport and building those connections, part of that is being yourself in this space. So I would say number 2 is definitely invest in your reflection. Make sure that your classroom, when people come in, they get a good sense of who you are, whether they're looking in the discussion forum or in your announcements or reading that your feedback, that your voice is consistent in all those spaces, and that you are there in all of those realms of your classroom. Number 3, become a translator. So I'm going to ask you a question now, and let's see if we get some responses. How many people have had a mentor or a teacher or a coach teach a lesson to you and then translate it, right, based on something that you're familiar with? So perhaps if you had a teacher in college or in high school or in your graduate studies, and they knew something about you, like that you played sports, or that you liked to garden, or that you loved to write. They taught you a lesson and made the connection, right? They taught it through a lens you were familiar with. They taught it through a sports analogy or a writing analogy, and they were able to teach that lesson to you very quickly because they built off of information that they already knew about you. Does anybody have that experience before? See if people type in here. Has anybody had somebody teach a lesson like that? Do you remember lessons like that when you were a student yourself? So part of being an educator is twofold: translating content, and we talked about this a little bit when working to make things simple and easy to remember or easy to digest. Part of that also is translating the content of the course, and it could be translating complex ideas like we talked about, and it could be also translating individual lessons. So each student is unique, each class is unique. It's one of the fascinating things about education and being an educator, even in an online space, right? That every class you have is uniquely different, and you can't teach the same class the same way twice. You have to tweak it a little bit. You have to tweak your feedback a little bit. You have to tweak your strategies in the discussion forum because each class is uniquely different. But also each student is uniquely different. And as you're working with those students, especially when they're asking for help or they need additional information, knowing something about your students and gathering that information through those dialogues you've had with them in the forum or in the introductory forum or the ways that you've gotten to know them, and then teaching those mini lessons to them in a way that connects with them is really important. Number 4, how many people like to use technology? Not sure if we're getting any comments in the chat. I'll put it in here. So, see, I love technology. Everybody loves technology. What are some of the technologies that you like to use? What are some of your favorites? Just anything. You might use, so some of my favorites, I'll give you some of mine. Some of my favorites are Adobe Spark, Screencast-O-Matic, yep, Canva, Vocaroo, Biteable on occasion. I love it. I love it. All these technologies, right, they're really fun. They're really neat to use, but a BOGO is a buy one, get one, right? So I like to think about technology as 2 ways, right? It's going to help you solve problems, right? It's going to help you solve a problem or help students learn content. But sure, I'll type in just a second here, Michael. But also help you add your personality to that class, right? And create your personality or establish your presence in that course in a different way to engage students. So let me go ahead and pull this up. There's 2 things. The BOGO is about engagement and about education. And I'm going to explain a little bit here. So if you're breaking down an assignment, and I'll put my technologies, my faves, in the chat here in just a sec. If you're using, and somebody had put Screencast-O-Matic, right? You can have your face on the screen also while you're breaking down something, but it's a great way to share your voice. When you're teaching that lesson with Screencast-O-Matic, be you, right? Showcase your personality, be genuine, and you'll be doing 2 things at the same time. You'll be increasing engagement with your class and connecting with them and building that rapport, but at the same time, helping solve that problem, helping them figure out content, break it down, learn new content, maybe succeed on an assignment. You're giving them that insight, or you're sharing your professional expertise. You'll be accomplishing 2 things if you use technology in some instances, right? But technology is also really tempting, right? We just want to put it in sometimes because it's so cool. And what we want to avoid is just putting technology in to put it in. We really want to think about, 1, how can I solve a problem? And 2, how can I increase engagement? If you're making an infographic, which is another wonderful thing to do for students, or breaking down an assignment, if you're making an infographic, grabbing maybe specific quotes or things that you've said and also including them in there will help students make the connection to things you've said in class and what that infographic is working to do. If you are nervous about being on camera or making a video for students, there's ways to just share your voice. So you can use a technology, and I'll pop them in here in the chat in just a second, called Vocaroo, and it records your voice very quickly. Right? It creates a link that you can share it. It's a very easy technology. And so now I can talk students through a concept, showcase my personality, engage with them, and increase that engagement. And I've used technology to do 2 things. So let me go ahead and put a couple in here for you. My favorites, Canva. These are all free. Okay, Canva. We already got Screencast-O-Matic, which is really easy to use. Let me put it in here. Adobe Spark, which I just included in my session at OLC. Vocaroo. Biteable, also free. And those are some of my favorites, my go-tos, because they're easy to use. They're very effective. You can make things very quickly, but you get that BOGO out of these technologies. So always look for ways to showcase your personality and engage with students and solve a problem at the same time. So far, so good. Do we have any questions so far?
I think you're right on. There don't seem to be any questions at this time,
Perfect.
Jamie. People are just posting some wonderful comments for you.
Great, great. So I'm going to keep going to our last one, which is one of my favorites. And let me go here. And this is embrace your inner storyteller. And we've heard a lot, you've probably heard a lot about storytelling lately, right? As a means of engagement and means of delivering presentations, of maybe marketing an idea. But embracing the role of a storyteller as an educator is huge to helping students engage with content and really giving context to content. And that's the thing that I want to share with you here. So 2 things. Explaining content through your experiences. As I said at the beginning, your superpower is you, your experiences, your knowledge, all the things that you bring to the classroom that aren't there without you, that couldn't possibly happen without you. And when you explain content through your experience, you're sharing that relevancy. But more than that, stories give context to content. And sometimes when we talk about stories, we think, boy, they have to be really long. And I'm not really great at telling stories, and maybe I can't do that in the classroom. They don't have to be long at all. Let me give you an example. See, I'm telling a story right now. Let me give you an example. So the other day, I'm teaching this term also, and the other day, a student in my class was explaining her challenges, and I'm overseeing first year experience, so I teach my first year experience course. And she was explaining a challenge she was having with time management. And she said, one of the things I'm struggling with is, right, trying to fit things in, because sometimes my daughter, who's really young, she's like a toddler or an infant, right, sleeps 30 minutes for her nap, and sometimes she sleeps 2 hours. And so in my response to her, I thought this is a great opportunity for me to teach a little lesson. I said something like this: I remember those days when my son was that little. And I was working, taking classes at the time. And I can remember making a conscious decision that one nap that he would take every day, I would do schoolwork. No matter how long that nap was, every single day, I would take one of his nap times and I would do schoolwork. And even if I made a lot of progress or a little progress, I made progress every single day. And I talked to her about how I made sure that I got to my goals, even if they were just tiny little pieces at a time. That making progress and doing something every day was better than doing nothing. So I took her comment. I told a story about my experience in order to give context to the topic for the week. Does that resonate with you? How many of you share stories with your students? How many people have learned through stories? Maybe that's a great way. Some of my best mentors have always used stories, right, to tell in order to help me learn a concept or maybe to gain some insight into something. So Rebecca, you're using stories all the time. That's wonderful. And you can share stories even if you're talking about your professional experiences. It could be a story on your career path. It could be a story about a very specific thing you experienced at work, or a breakthrough that you had when you used one of the strategies presented in your course, or your experience with a specific topic in your course. But they don't have to be very long. And you can share stories all the time, little ones, big ones, ones that you share with video, ones that you write out. But stories really help students grab onto ideas and make sense of them and see how they apply in the real world space. So those are my 5 strategies to transition from being a facilitator and simply managing content to owning your classroom through all the things that you bring to the course. And I hope you enjoyed this presentation. I know we have about 5 minutes left. I'm happy to stay on and answer any questions for you. I really appreciate you making time for me today. I keep looking down at the chat if you see me looking down, but I want to look here. Thank you so much for inviting me to be with you. I hope that the rest of your conference experience is fantastic. I really enjoyed getting to spend these 30 minutes with you, and I hope you enjoyed the strategies I had to share with you. Thank you so much, David. I'm really glad that you came. Thank you, Jill. Thanks for coming. And again, you might know me from this blog. And if you teach first-year students, I'm going to put it in here. You're welcome to contribute. It's OFYE Matters on Academically Speaking. And we have guest contributors all the time. Thanks again. Oh, I love it. Rebecca, I'm so glad. Teaching an online class is all about being that educator and helping students really engage with the content, and something that only you can do.